And we are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second of live coding streams. I mean, not counting things like AI Morning Live, which I've been doing with Stephen Baker. This is the second of the Chiron Codex AI coding live streams. It's early in the morning, so I need to have my coffee. I am going to show you the app that I've been working on. This is called Axminster, and it is a software design modeling tool using UML, and which is the Unified Modeling Language, and OCL, the Object Constraint Language. If you watched my earlier video where I said, right, I've built a 1990s Java dev shop out of AI agents, I had used a collection of sub-agent definitions to build an agent that works with each of the different types of UML diagram, but using the plant UML format. And that had the difficulty that the models weren't constrained to generate valid diagrams. They would create things that weren't in correct plant UML syntax, or that weren't in correct like semantic UML, and that meant that like it was hard to sort of use those diagrams as part of a design process. And this app effectively constrains both the human designer and the AI agent to only use like semantically valid constructs. So I can't just like draw shapes on the canvas. I have to create a system boundary, and let's model my digital nature journal app that I've been working on, which is called On the Wing. So the actor in that is called an observer, because they are out in nature. They're like recording what they see and reviewing it and adding it to their journal. That sentence already gives us a set of the use cases. So the observer can capture an observation. They can record observations in a journal, and they can review their journal. And it's the observer actor who does each of these. So we'll create an association between the observer actor and each of these use cases. So, you know, it's a bit like the UI forces you to do the things that make for valid UML constructs. You can create other types of diagrams. So I could create sequence diagrams, state machines, activities, components. The other part of this app is, you know, of course, I can go through these things, and I can also inspect the different things. I can add OCL constraints to like the various nodes in the design. So can an AI agent. While the app is running, it's also running an MCP server. So I'm going to save this model. It saves in the XMI format. That's the extensible model interchange format, which is a standard defined by the Object Management Group, who also maintain the UML and the OCL standards. So it's an XML format that other modeling tools should be able to load. Like various of the modeling tools that are out there actually diverge from the standard in certain ways. So I haven't tested the full interoperability, but I have made sure that the documents that this app produces are like fully aligned with the current version of the standard, which, if I remember rightly, is version 2.5.1. So anything that reads standard XMI documents can load these diagrams in. Okay, so there is an MCP server running, which means that I can launch Coding Assistant. Let's use Claude Code, for example. It should have access. It doesn't have access to the MCP server. That's interesting because I previously saved a configuration for it. Just check that that's still in place. That is not in place. Okay, so my MCP settings file has disappeared. Right. Hopefully I've still got one. There we go. Let's just check. This one does have that in place. Oh, it still doesn't have it. Okay, well, the dangers of live coding, I guess. Let's see if anti-gravity is still configured to use it. Okay, great. So anti-gravity has the Axminster MCP service configured. I will go back and address the configuration for Claude Code later. That's good. So that means that I can tell it to load the MCP, load the model through the MCP service and inspect and make sure that it is actually like valid. To make sure that it is connected, the connection is valid, and that it is working. So it will now generate tool calls to the MCP server. And it's generating a call to open the model, and then to get the information about the model, and it has the same information that is in this diagram. So that shows that we can use this as a kind of graphical form of spec-driven development. If I can express my design for an application in the diagrammatic format, then I can communicate that design very precisely to the model. I think that's going to be pretty useful for sort of co-created software design between a human developer or a team of human developers and AI assistants. I'm going to go further than that though, because the coding assistant can, through the MCP server, also make changes to the model. So let's just test that. So let's just let it review the code. So we're effectively doing a round trip. And for those of us who kind of lived through the first approach at computer-assisted software engineering, or CASE, in the 1990s, being able to do a round trip meant that you could generate your code from your model, but you could also generate your model from your code, and that this was useful for keeping everything in sync. In our case, it means having a visual presentation, a diagrammatic presentation of what the coding system finds, which is really helpful because it means I don't have to read through like some massively verbose markdown document, which is the usual way that they report their findings. I can just get it here. It's like looking up the add use case, add association, add actor tools. And yeah, these are common. What it's generating here are actually like common anti-patterns for UML diagrams. Like login isn't a use case. Nobody uses your app because they want to log in. So let's just check whether that actually did. Yeah, there we go. So it would be nice if those got reflected, if those changes got reflected while the MCP server was making those changes. So that's an interesting feature to explore in this app. As I was saying, the idea of like logging in or updating your profile or like deleting your account, they are things that that people do, but they don't do them because it's a goal of using your app. They do that because it's bureaucracy that your app like enforces upon them or imposes on them, right? Nobody looks forward to logging in or gets a bonus at work because they logged into their work systems. Deleting an entry, that is a valid like use case, and so like that makes sense to add. These other ones I would probably remove those again and not consider them to be use cases. But we've seen the kind of two-way interaction between me and the coding assistant through this app. Okay, so I'm going to quit the app. I'll actually quit anti-gravity here and close that terminal. So we're in the Axminster project here. This is an Xcode project. And why don't we just go and try and fix this issue? So I'll do this in Xcode because we are working with an Xcode project. And let's just start by like describing the problem, effectively applying the call out error pattern, because like we've seen something that didn't work. We'll tell the model that it's wrong and allow it to identify how to fix it. So this is very much like for those people who don't use Xcode, this is basically a chatbot interface, very similar to like Claude Code or Pi or Anti-Gravity or whatever, that's running in the developer tool. It has access to various tools that allow it to change the Xcode project configuration. And of course, it can kind of see and edit the files, and it's going to so it can make changes. It can communicate those changes with Xcode so that you can see in the UI what changes what edits to files were made by the assistant. This is integrated with Claude Sonnet 4.5. You can also use local models, and you can use Gemini and ChatGPT Codex as well. So it's found out that there is a particular there's a command pattern that's used in this project. And that the MCP server isn't using the pattern correctly. So it's making changes to the model structure. So the MCP server is in the Axminster kit project package. MCP model server. So I'm going to tell it to look that up. So now we get to wait while it reads the files and finds out what it can see in here. It actually thinks that it's correct. So it's possible that the UI didn't update rather than that the MCP server didn't use the correct commands. Also wondering how this error that appears here is related to the issue. Right, here we go. It's worked out that the canvas doesn't actually track observations, and so the MCP server is correctly using the command pattern, which is correctly notifying the app of changes, and then the canvas isn't using those, isn't observing those changes, and so it isn't redrawing. I actually intended, the reason that I've got one of these canvases open is because I noticed that there was a load of code duplication between them, which was the task that I was going to work on now. Let's get it to fix this issue and then test the fix, and then I'll go on to what I actually intended to do in the first place, which is to implement code sharing between these different diagram canvases. So I can see that there's a couple of people watching live. Hello, good to see you here. Right, there we go. So you can see that it is using the change count now to lay out the canvas. So when the change count changes, hopefully it also binds to the change count, and so like actually does update. We'll check that. So yes, you can see how duplicative this is. Every activity, use case, class, sequence, state machine, and component diagram has a separate canvas that all use the same logic, and this logic was incorrect. So what we're going to do, once we've validated this fix, is extract out a common canvas behavior so that each canvas is just responsible for drawing its specific diagram type, but that it uses common drawing code. Or we may even be able to use a single canvas and just rely on the data model imposing the correct diagram structure. We'll investigate that. Those are two alternative approaches. So we use the ask for alternatives pattern to evaluate those alternatives and to discover other options. Claude is a very prolix model, so it likes to tell me in great detail what it's done. Well done, Claude. I would pat you on the head, but you're a piece of software. Great. Okay, so let's confirm that fix. So there's my model back. We'll actually now need to reopen that window that I closed before. Well done, Graham, for thinking ahead. Anti-gravity does have the MCP connection. Okay, so let's see. This should now update live, we hope. So once again, it's got to kind of load its description of the MCP tools. Barcoded, hello. Do I keep skills files in my home directory agent skills, or in a project folder, or in none? I keep them in the home directory one so that they're available to all tools. There are some where I kind of regret doing that, and I want to move them into project folders. Like I have a bunch of Java related skills for working on one Java project, and sometimes when I'm working on another project, like they're called sort of Java BDD coder and Java TDD coder, and sometimes when I'm working on another project, like in a different language, the assistant goes, okay, so I need to do some BDD now. Let me like load the Java tool, and then tries to do everything in a Java way when it's not using like the Java tools. So I do need to move those out. But generally, my skills are kind of mostly about project management, or about planning, or about creating like test plans or verification strategies, like fairly sort of high level things, or about reviewing interactions and like looking for points of improvement in a workflow. And so they're project agnostic. So I don't tend to keep them in the project folder. Okay, so it now says that it has done that, and we can see that the diagram didn't change. So I need to go and call out that error. If we reopen it, then yes, we see our new delete entry use case is still there. Login and update profile delete account are not, but we still had to reload. So this is straightforward call out error. Yeah, so basically, like the project specific folders I would use for things that are specific to the project. Like that's tautological, but that's the kind of level I would do. Like I have this Axminster app has Xcode project targets that are tests that are part of the scheme for like building the app, and it has Swift packages which have their own tests, which you have to run through the Swift test command. So it would make sense to have an agent skill that says when you run the unit tests, you have to run both of these commands. When you run the UI tests, you have to run this command, and here's where like the outputs get saved, so that like the model correctly runs all of the tests when it's validating generated changes. That kind of thing would make sense as a project specific skill because it doesn't translate to anything else. But my skill for designing verification strategy tells it to use like both black box and white box approaches to reviewing the code and designing tests, to use like boundary value analysis, equivalence partitioning, to decide on appropriate coverage, to consider like mutation testing and fuzz testing, to like where both of those things are appropriate. So mutation testing to validate that the tests do actually pick up changes in behavior, and fuzz testing to ensure that inputs are like points where data gets input into the system are robust against random data, as well as like handling known case as well. So there we go. That kind of stuff doesn't depend on the specific layout of the project, doesn't depend on like the technology choices or anything. That makes sense as a kind of global thing. So okay, it's come up with debugging steps for me to run. So let's stop the app. Clear the logs, start again. Open the file. and it says that I should see that blue dot when the diagram renders, which I evidently didn't. But let's make a change. I think that's everything fine. So I kind of feel like I'm being used a bit here because the Claude is asking me to do its legwork. This would be so this app has full UI automation tests. So it would be possible to create a UI automation test that also drives the MCP server just by making direct network calls. Oh, great! Now the updates do occur. That's quite funny. So yeah, now we can see that the Firebase system, the Firebase actor, does the login, show profile, log out, and store photo use cases. Great. And we also saw that it updated, but now we get this error. So let's save that just to make sure that it's in sync. Quit the app. Let's quit this. Let's go back here. So we'll get it to remove that login code because like this issue is not a thing. But it does look like there might be some kind of race condition because it doesn't claim to have done anything differently. It could just be the print that caused it to change timing. So I don't necessarily consider that fixed, but I'm not going to be able to kind of like go into much more depth here without just spending a lot of time staring at the camera thinking. So we'll defer that one and see if the problem comes up again. Also, once this app goes out to beta testers, and if you're a Mac user watching this and you want to beta test this app, you need latest Tahoe or the Golden Gate beta. Drop me a line and I'll add you to the test flight once we get to the point where I'm doing betas, which should be soon. So I'm going to keep this session because we're looking into a related problem. So I'm loosely saying this needs to be synced between the app and the MCP server. The MCP server is actually running in the app, so you need to have the app running while your coding assistant is using MCP. You don't necessarily need for the document to be open, but I think if the document is open, then you should be able to use the two in sync. So I'll add that screenshot to the prompt and see what it makes of this. Okay, so it has discovered the cause. And it's realized that it needs to call back into the app when the MCP server saves the model, so that the app's view of the document state knows that the document has been resaved. But I don't mind that error coming up if someone literally does just open the XML file in TextMate and makes changes, or uses Claude Code to kind of interpret the file and edit the file and save it back. Then yes, it makes sense to get that alert, but it shouldn't happen if the app is making a change through through one of its effectively UIs. Like the graphical user interface and the MCP server are two different UIs that the same app is exposing. It'd be the same as getting an error if you've got an app open and use AppleScript to change it. So it's going through and creating a callback so that when the model gets saved in the MCP server, the document representation in the app notices and cleans up its undo state so it doesn't think it's got pending changes. Okay, let's give that a test. So we'll run the app. Open that file again. We'll resume this conversation in anti-gravity. So we'll do a different diagram. Two different frontier models in use at the moment: Claude in Xcode and Gemini in anti-gravity. We're also making a rod for my own back here because I have a natural tendency when I'm on live to want to kind of carry on talking through the pauses in action, because it makes it more interesting for you watching the live stream to actually have someone talking to you rather than someone staring mutely at a terminal screen. However, when I come back to edit excerpts from the live stream to make shorter videos, I either have to cut or skip through the bits where nothing's happening. And if I'm talking through them, then I have far fewer opportunities to like make the before and the after line up. So as you can see, things are now happening live. We didn't get all of that debugging code removed. I might just manually go through and do that. And we're seeing problems with the diagram being incomplete, but then we're also seeing those problems disappear as the model uses the MCP server to correct all the details. So that didn't make the problem go away that we're trying to fix. Before we go back to that, Barcoded has added another question to the chat. Would I be able to use the approach that I just wrote about of having a virtual file system instead of the MCP? As I assume the XMI is hierarchical, just like a file system. So that was actually the reason I created this app in the first place, was I wanted to compare those two approaches. So I've got the MCP server, we can see that it works, we can see how much context it costs, how much information is in like anti-gravity's configuration to store the information about the tools that it uses, and we can see how well it works. And actually, like other than this issue with the autosave, it is working pretty well. It's keeping everything in sync. But I could also add an fskit file system that exposes a model as a virtual file system and allows like tools to work with like the nodes directly. It isn't naturally a hierarchical data structure. It's naturally a graph. There's a hierarchy in that like the XML file contains a model which contains diagrams which contain the bits of the diagrams, but it's actually a graph. Like you can have references from classes to other classes that then reference back to the first class. If you've got like a two-way relationship between two objects, that isn't naturally hierarchical, but you could expose it as a hierarchy. And yeah, like one of the things I want to do is to kind of explore this question of whether a file system works as well, works better, is more or less efficient than an MCP server. But I do know that like tools like all of the coding assistants can already interact with MCP, and so that's a good starting point for this as a product, because it's something that these tools can already work with. Okay, so let's go back to here. So I'm going to give it one more go at fixing it itself. I've got a hypothesis, but one of the aspects of the call out error pattern is that I, as a person who is like using this coding assistant, have a choice over whether I give my hypothesis to the assistant. If I don't, no, let's start the other way around. If I do, if I tell the assistant I think this is the problem, then I'm effectively kind of biasing it towards that hypothesis. And if that is correct, then it will very quickly get to a solution that is based on that hypothesis and potentially solve the problem. But if that's incorrect, then it will apply that idea that I add into its context to the reason about the problem. And even if that is not helpful, it will bias it towards that fix. So actually, yeah, so what I was going to say was that I'm going to not tell it this time, but if I still get the problem on the subsequent time, then I will tell it what my idea was and see if that helps. But actually, I have seen in this discussion that it has encountered my idea has been one of the things that it's generated, and so it's already using it. It's this thing. Prevent the conflict by using a reload command. I don't actually know if that's going to work, because I think that this might be something that it can't do inside the app. I think that alert might come from the Apple frameworks or even the operating system noticing a change, like tracking changes to the file and then telling the app. Telling the app that the document has changed, even if the app would be robust to that. But we'll see where it gets. So my solution would be for the MCP server to test whether the app has the document open, and if it does, to just not save the file, because like the user will see that it's edited. When they go to close the app, they will get told that that it's changed, and do they want to save? And so there's no chance of losing data. So it's come up with option one. Okay, sorry. Before we go into those options, barcoded. I'm glad that like my explanation made sense. I feel like I've been rambling for a bit, so it's good to know that I'm actually like talking constructively. This has come up with 4 different options. I didn't ask for alternatives, but here we are. One is accept the behavior. It's an inconvenience. It looks messy. It looks like this app isn't well thought out. I'm not going to do that. Option 2. This is the one that I was trying to describe, or was about to describe before I switched threads. Disable MCP saves for open documents. That's what I think we should do. Option 3 is remove. Is effectively remove autosave, which doesn't sound like a good user experience. Just to get this one change in behavior in in a case that like I don't actually know whether this is going to be a common or a rare case. Option 4 is to delay so that the autosave stuff happens before the MCP commits, but that's not a guarantee that anything's going to fix. So I think option 2 is the right thing here. I might have a look up the documentation for reference file document as well and see whether it actually has a save command or method, because if it does, then we can just use that directly. Oh, nice. Deprecated. Oh, deprecated in 27. That's all right, because we're on 26. But it does imply that this is not the way that we should do this in the future. Okay, I'm going to defer the details on that. So I don't have a beads task tracker for the open tasks, because effectively I've kind of got to the point in this app where I'm happy for it to go out on test flight. I'm working with someone to design the app icon and some of the sort of graphical presentation, and when that's in place, it's ready for test flight. There's no coding changes currently, so my defer the details is a little list in my book of things I want to do between beta test and release, unless I get steering from the beta users, from the test flight users, about what they would like to see. So I'm just going to write in that list, migrate from reference file document to document. So what I want to see is whether this has a yeah, so this has a save command. We could go through the app's document management to save it. So that might be a potential improvement on like the not saving, which we've got in place. Let me ask about that. And I'm going to use the just ask pattern. So yeah, just ask. The pattern says don't actually make changes, just use your model to explore and evaluate them. And so that's what I'm doing here. I'm telling it I don't want to actually do this, I just want to understand whether it would work. So it's going to go off and do that. In the meantime, I'm going to test the current behavior. We'll go back to this. Let's see what happens here. Also, this is now showing edited when the document wasn't edited. Wow, this has come up with a lot of things. It's called options A, B, 1 and 2, and then suggested option 2, and I'm not sure what it means. So let's read through. Each document window has an underlying NS document, but we don't have access to it. So that would be the thing that we need. Because then we could tell the document to save, and the document's version tracking system wouldn't be in conflict. So, but we can't do that within SwiftUI, so we'd have to break out into AppKit. And that would be a mess. That is not going to work. So that what it's saying is, why not just press Command S in the app? Problem with pressing Command S in the app is that a different document might be active, so you might save the wrong thing. We can publish what it's calling a trigger, so basically like a notification that save is requested, but there's still no way to actually do that save. So basically, the answer is we can't do this within SwiftUI. So it wants to keep with skipping the save. Let's see how that worked. So there we go. It has claimed that it's added the details. It has added the details, and there's a fork join because you can do them in any order. This still says that it's edited. Save that. Open it back up. Switch. Okay, and the edited state isn't changing. So I think possibly I just looked at the this edited state tracker before at a point where there was an edit, and I got confused about that. So it looks like it's working now, I'm just going to to prove this thing about I will get prompted to save it. Just by renaming, using the MCP server to rename something. The reason for doing this is that the UX for the On the Wing app has a when you store an observation, it is just in your session. It's not actually in your journal. You go through a review stage. So it makes sense to call out that this is a pending, not a reviewed observation. Okay, so that didn't. There we go. It didn't actually prompt me to save, but that might be. Yeah, it's because of the state restoration in the app. So the thing is working correctly now. I think we're good. We can have a review of the changes. So we've got. That reminds me, we still have these debug statements. So it's a good job that we did review those changes. That's the only place it exists. Well, let me just check that. Let's see what else is going on. That's a comment. That's a comment. That is a word inside a bigger thing. There are no remaining print statements. Okay, so we have got rid of all of the debug things. So yeah, now we have the changes that add the change count to the canvases. Good. That's the change that we want to see. We have in the document registry, we still have this debug statement. We no longer need that. That's also part of the change management thing. And yeah, so this is where it looks up if the app is open in the UI, then it doesn't write the file. But it does potentially change the URL in case like the MCP wants to like save it to a different location, and then if the MCP server is the only thing that has a file open, then it's going to write that that file directly. This all looks good. I'm going to stage those changes. So this, I think, actually ends up in a pretty good UX. If you've got a document open, you get to choose when you save it. And an MCP server that you're working with doesn't get to like write files while you're still collaborating, in scare quotes, over the diagram's contents. So you're in control. If you're using the MCP server like sort of headlessly, and you're not actually like looking at or editing the document, you're just using it as a structured data store for a plan that the coding assistant is making, then it does get to save the changes because like you're you're not trying to do anything else with it. So like I think this actually ends up in a pretty good place. Okay, good. So we've actually fixed a bug in the first like hour of this session, which I wasn't expecting to do because I hadn't noticed that the bug was there. I'm happy with that. I'm not going to push changes immediately because I have Xcode Cloud set up for this project, and every time I push it does a build and it runs through the tests for the small amount of like logic that's in the app, a fairly robust collection of UI tests. We've discovered that it would be useful to have tests for the test the UI and the MCP server working together. That would be an interesting thing to add. There are then a bunch of tests of the Axminster kit, which is the app logic implemented in in Swift without any UI connections. So that's the things that lay out the diagram, that maintain the UML meta model and the OCL meta model, that save and load XMI files, and that runs the MCP server, including fuzz tests for the OCL parser, the XMI parser, and the MCP server input, so that we can get some like randomly generated input into those things and like detect whether there are crashes. So it's a whole bunch of tests. I'll run them when we've got like probably at the end of the session by pushing this, but we will test as we go. The next thing, we don't have tests that test the MCP server and the UI together, so there was no point running my UI automation tests during that last activity. They would not have caught anything. That's a gap in the test coverage. Remember, the trust the tests pattern says to not rely on the model telling you that it's done and the code is 100% production ready, have tests in place. Well, we use manual validation for that operation because it was a complex interaction I haven't set up automated tests for. That will come later. So the other thing I want to do, which we will need to run the tests after, is I want to unify a lot of the code for the different diagram types. So these canvases: activity diagram canvas, class diagram canvas, component diagram canvas, sequence diagram canvas, state machine, and use case. These are all effectively separate classes that draw the different types of diagrams on a canvas. There's a lot of logic between them, like we've seen with the change count tracking, that can be unified. And actually, like drawing a canvas, there's a lot of common behavior as well. The thing that is distinct is the just the particular objects you are trying to draw in those diagrams. So there's a lot of opportunity for having a shared shared behavior that just has kind of split the diagram type specific extensions. Also, I've been talking to the person who's helping me with the icon and the graphics. That's actually a member of the Chiron Codex Patreon community. It's Brandon Dees. Thank you very much, Brandon. And we've been talking about like whether we want to kind of provide some sort of theming behavior. So putting like that logic in one place. So there's a single canvas that is themable, and then there are and then there are the particular types of canvas for drawing each diagram. It means that there's only like one place to go to add themability. So let's set that up, and we're going to stop and plan for the moment because I want to like see evidence that this thing's going to like provide a working design. Yeah, this is ultimately like a design change. It's going from these distinct classes to a common class. I want to understand that this design is actually workable and maintainable. So I've added this idea of themification. Like, I'm not actually building themification, I'm just getting ready for it. You know, as Kent Beck says, make the change easy, then make the easy change. And so obviously it has to like read a load of files. I've used the clean slate pattern, so it's not kind of using all of that information that was in the context for diagnosing the problems with file synchronization. Like, that is completely irrelevant to this other task. So we're getting some output, and it looks like this is going to share the theming. So there's going to be a theming protocol with a standard implementation. That's great. That means that future themes can change these ideas. Now, like, whether this is sufficient to design the kind of the themes we have in mind, I don't know yet. We haven't got as far as having those themes, but it gives us a home for putting those things and like proof that it works. So that's a good start. It's found some common logic that can extract for doing text measuring. It's identified that there is common logic, shared drawing, common like basic structure, common shapes, and then these specific canvases are going to use those. So this is a really nice like layered architecture. Actually, it's saying that there are a set of primitives. There is like being a canvas, and then there are drawing shapes, and those shapes can have styles. A specific canvas uses those primitives, so it uses the styles, it uses the basic canvasness, and it uses the shape drawing commands to build the specific shapes that it needs, correctly styled. And now it's got a logging utility. That is evidently because I didn't find all of the like all of the debugging code and remove it. So I'm just going to ask it to remove the debugging code. But yes, in general, I think that's a good plan. So it's worked out that like a lot of the things were common implementations that can be shared. That like the color style actually like allows it to name the colors that are used instead of just having conditional statements, so it looks pretty good. So I'm just going to let it run. Remember, we've committed to version control. So like if something goes wrong, I can not only clean slate the models context, I can start over. I can just undo all of its changes, revert like back to the previous commit, and start again. I suspect that most of this will just work and we'll be able to fix forward, because this kind of identify duplicate content and then move it all into one place this is the kind of thing that these models are good at. So I'm going to take a break while it's working. I will be back in a couple of minutes. So it's a kind of common thing in working with like Xcode and coding assistants that the Xcode kind of keeps the compile state up to date, and the assistant doesn't actually read the diagnostics necessarily in real time. So we'll get through all of these changes and a bunch of the errors will go away. But we might find at the end that it still doesn't build. We have to kind of pass the errors to the assistant and tell it, okay, fix problems. It does this control here means it does actually have access to the build errors in its context. I've just noticed that it doesn't always pay attention to them unless you like explicitly say fix this error. But it is still going through. So it's got to the point where it's doing the individual canvas types, which suggests that it's got most of the way through its task list, right? Because we started here. So done the theme, done text measurer, edge drawing, shape drawing, and now it's working on the individual canvases. And it's the new types that it doesn't find. So I wonder whether this is a problem with the sequencing in Xcode's index, that it's doing like the file building, but it hasn't rebuilt the package, so it doesn't know that the current module has these types in it because those haven't been added to the index. In the meantime, if there's anything else you're interested in seeing, let me know. I'll probably kind of thinking that this is the big task I want to cover on this stream, and I would wrap up after it's done. But if there's like some small things or particular patterns you want to see, do shout out and I can go through those as well. One thing we were talking earlier about configuring MCP tools and agent skills, and Xcode has a separate configuration folder for that stuff. It doesn't it obviously doesn't use any of the tool specific ones like the Claude Code.claude folder or .gemini folder or anything like that. It also doesn't use the .agents folder in the home directory. It has somewhere in library, I can't remember the path to it. I have yet to set up all of my configuration in Xcode because I've largely not been using Xcode to drive my coding assistant. I've been using Pi for the most part and anti-gravity a bit. So the early integrations for Xcode were kind of literally just a chat and a file diff, and it wasn't very workable. Now that this is Xcode 26.5, I think, or 26.6, let's have a look. 26.6. The integration with Xcode itself is a lot better, and that makes the tools a lot more usable. I don't know why it feels the need to generate these like summary documents whenever it does a significant chunk of work. Anyway, like that aside, the integration with Xcode is much better than it was when Xcode 26 was new. So I had stopped using it for a long while and haven't got as far as like integrating my skills and config with Xcode's specific configuration area. Barcoded asks, have you noticed that running Claude within Xcode and outside of Xcode differs? The understanding of Swift API design and concurrency is a lot better within Xcode. I have definitely noticed that the two are different. I hadn't noticed that the Swift concurrency story was better inside Xcode, but it is that is interesting because that is a common problem I've encountered, is that the agents don't understand or don't have enough information to work with the Swift concurrency model, and so will generate problems and will then just like apply the @main actor decorator everywhere to fix the problem. So we've got 83 errors. Sorry, let me carry on that sentence. So they will they tend to like not understand Swift concurrency and just use main actor to paper over any cracks, and then everything's running on the main thread, and that's bad. Yeah, if there's specific like system prompts or tools or diagnostic information that the agent is getting within Xcode that helps to drive that's better than it gets within Claude Code or something else, then that's good news. And I think that is like value that Apple can add. And even the team that I was on, which is the developer publications team, they could write documentation on how to use Swift concurrency that's available to the model. I think what is probably happening is that the model running in Xcode has access to the Xcode documentation, and so it can read all of those guides. I don't actually know how that difference materializes. So let's just build and check those 83 errors have gone away. No, they have not. Okay, let's have a look at the errors. Yeah, all of those things that weren't in scope still aren't in scope. So kind of call out error on that one. Yeah, fundamentally I haven't used coding assistants inside Xcode enough to have an opinion, an up-to-date and useful opinion on how well it works, because I kind of got put off it by its early limited state. I mean, it definitely seems to be working better now. Oh, right. This is one of the things that still frustrates me about working with Xcode. I'm going to check in the intelligence thing. Yes, it has the MCP server. Okay, those are commands. They don't include the access to the Xcode tools. But external agents use Xcode tools. There's no reason why it can't add files to the project navigator. Why have a dog and bark yourself, as they say. So I'm going to have to go through and manually add these files like a cave dweller. Where does it put them? I don't see the files. I'm going to have to ask it. Well, great. They're in the fuzz tests folder. I wouldn't have thought of that. And now it's creating different files with extra names. Ugh. Right, I take back what I said about integration with Xcode being better. I apologize for my earlier statement. So I managed to create this. Yeah, there they all are. I managed to create the markdown files for the spurious reports I didn't ask for. It didn't manage to create, or it did manage to create these other files, and it did them in the wrong place. And then it tried to create them again when I asked where they were. Oh no, that's the wrong folder as well. No, not right. Now I've balls this out completely. Okay. Now they're all added to the index, because even that drag operation did two different things in one operation. I have a lot of respect for the people who work on Xcode, and I know quite a few of them personally, and have done since before I worked at Apple. In fact, it's going back to like the first time I ever went to a WWDC, or even before that. This is very much a Conway's Law problem. When you've got that big a team, the things that work are the things that the org chart permits, I think. I'm not going to talk about the internals of the company or the team any more than that. It's not fair to do so. Xcode is like probably definitely the most integrated of the IDEs, right? You can do all of the kind of submitting stuff to the store, getting diagnostic information back from customers, using that diagnostic information to inform performance tests, dealing with deployment, with like cloud integration, with issue tracking and everything, like all in the app. It genuinely is the like an integrated development environment that you can like live in and do all of your stuff. But these kinds of when they spend 2 years focusing on a new feature, and then like the new feature causes more frustration than like if we didn't have coding intelligence at all, then I'd either just use Claude Code or I would like type my Swift in. Getting the intelligent tool to do it and then like have it do it wrong is worse than not having it at all, unfortunately. These things I can just I don't know what to use here. Let's use regular for everything and then see whether we like the result. Yay! Oh no, I missed one. That's good. It's giving up. When it sees an error. Yeah, this is fun. I'm glad you're all joining me for Graham discovers a build with 0 errors, builds it, discovers a new error, types in the fix. Thank you very much, Claude. Right, here we go. No errors. Let's just have a quick manual smoke test. Let's open that file that we had before. Okay, the font looks about the same. The line weight has changed, but it's not like unusable. And as I say, we haven't really started styling anything yet, so it's not like the end of the world. We can override this by adding star. Both of those diagrams look right, or at least like they look like they are being drawn correctly. So I'm not going to manually draw every single diagram type to check whether they all look good. What I'm going to do is run the UI test, because I have a UI test, at least one for every type of diagram. So we can trust the tests here. We can, assuming the tests still compile, of course. That's not necessarily a given, even though there weren't any changes. So now it's going to run the automation tests. As you can see, it's actually going to go through and generate some useful diagrams as part of its test, so we'll get to see what works or what doesn't work. I hadn't thought about this, but I now have the automation running overlay over my screen while these tests are occurring. You don't see that on the live stream. You just see the screen. So it's actually, my screen is currently more usable for you than it is for me. You're welcome. Don't you think the issue you just encountered is a general problem, a problem of when to write the code yourself and when to use an agent? Yes, I do, and it's a question that I don't have a clear answer to. Obviously, like, I wanted to use this live stream to document the patterns and demonstrate how I use them, and to have the discussions that we've had over like using MCP and using file systems and agent skills and all that kind of stuff. So I probably did lean in a bit here to prompting the agent before I looked at the code. I'm actually working on a second app much earlier on, which, like, Axminster is definitely a part of the Chiron Codex story, right? It's providing a structured way for people to work with each other and with LLMs on software design. It kind of grew out of being a way to create a beefier demo for my kind of file systems over MCP approach. Yeah, look at that. That panel didn't look right at all. I'll go back to that later. Yeah, it grew out of wanting to build that demo, and I kind of, like, having built it, went, oh yeah, this would actually be a useful thing for other people to have access to. I'll kind of turn it into a product. The other app that I'm working on is more sort of line of businessy. It really is a thing to show how, like, local inference can be better in, like, for certain uses than like frontier models. Putting humans in control of workflows that involve LLMs. It really is a kind of on-brand thing for the pattern language and for Chiron Codex in general. And actually, that one, I haven't, like, I've been mostly focused on Axminster, so I haven't done too much work on that one yet, but I've mostly done it by hand. I have used the ask for alternatives and the stop and plan patterns to clarify my thinking on the information hierarchy in the app and the user interface, and what components in a UI I would use to realize that user interface. But I've written the UI code, like, almost entirely myself. I encountered a bug and asked, like, Gemma 4 in Pi how to fix the bug, and I wrote the persistence, like the document model and its storage myself. So, like, even though that is an AI augmented app, I'm largely hand coding it. That's partly well, why am I doing that? Partly because I enjoy it. Yeah, like many of the people who are less inclined to use AI than members of Chiron Codex, like, I enjoy typing my square brackets. I'm using Objective-C for that project. I enjoy typing my square brackets into my text editor, so I'm very happy with being able to do so. And because I have kind of specific ideas about how the information architecture should work, it's as easy for me to express that in terms of an AppKit view hierarchy as it is for me to describe it in enough detail for an assistant to do the same thing. Did I use the agent for review of my code? I have specific things, so I tend to rely on automated correctness tools. So I used I kind of built the app, and let's say built the app, the one sub component of one feature that I've built so far, which is basically the opening files, showing that the files are open and saving them bit. I built that in AppKit Objective-C. I wrote some tests as I was going, and then used test coverage tools to discover which paths I hadn't covered. And applying trusted tests to even my own code. Run the tests with sanitizers on. I did use a local model, probably Gemma 4, to check that I had got the sort of arc ownership correct. So I got it to check that I had no sort of retained cycles and things like that. But yeah, I largely try and rely on sort of automated deterministic tools, and then use those in my workflow here. So I've already done, probably time to do it again. I've already been through a process of making sure there are zero static analysis issues or runtime correctness reports from the Axminster app. You can see that there are 14 blue triangle warnings in the app. Those are from the XCUI test runner itself, which has thread priority inversion issues, which I can't fix, but I have reported feedback. So yeah, I don't have a sort of a clear answer for. I use an assistant in this case, and I type the code out myself in this case. And I do kind of flip between them. Like I said, I kind of did the code up until I encountered a problem that I realized it would be quicker for me to ask an assistant what's going wrong here. That was to do with an outline. I had a one of those kind of standard 3-pane views like Xcode, where you have the sort of source list on the left, the main content in the middle, and then the your sort of library of things you can do in the right. And the source list is an outline view with the source list style. And I had the model object that is the collection of sources being passed through from the document to this the view controller for that source list, and it wasn't updating its state correctly. And I thought the problem is I have not sequenced reload data with setting the thing in the correct way, and it's going to be quicker for a model to discover where I've done that wrong than it is for me to kind of go through all that code myself, because I was using nib files, so I had the await from nib method as well as the connecting the objects up, and separate nib for the view controllers with the source list view and the overall view with the split view. So like which await from lib is being called at which time. I just thought, what, it'll be easier for an assistant to just tell me how to fix this. But I was kind of in a mindset of mostly doing the coding myself and reaching out to the assistant for help. This app, one of the things that I did was I wanted to test Fable. So actually the first version of it, I wrote an instruction to Fable to create a list of tasks and beads that like outlined all the work to make the app exist, and then went away and like came back once a day and hit like renew when when it had got as far as it could before it ran out of usage tokens, and got most of the bulk of this app done without reading the code at all. And so those ideas sort of refactoring the canvas and so on come from coming back and me reviewing the code that the assistant generated. So in one case I'm doing all the work myself. In the other case I'm letting the tool do all the work, and then deciding, do I want to use this approach or do I want to like do it another way. Irritatingly, whenever you finish UI tests, the macOS stays in dark mode even if you had light mode configured before. But there we go. All of the tests have worked, have passed. So that is, I don't know what the grey is trying to tell me. Probably just that there's no assertions in there, so that it's not that anything passed, it's just that nothing failed. So then like we have to do the Swift package test, but we didn't actually change any code in the Swift package. That was all UI work, so that is fine. I want to delete these annoying extra documents I didn't ask for. That's probably okay. So like low stakes conspiracy theory, that's how Claude make their money out of this. They're charging Apple for every token, or me. This is because I've connected my Claude subscription, so they're just finding excuses to generate extra tokens. Prove me wrong. But yeah, we have the changes. Like we've gone through the tests. I trust the tests. Everything worked. And it is a refactor because like we didn't change behavior. We just saw all of the same tests pass before and after. So we do still have this error, layout problem with the I can't remember which one it was. One of the popovers. I think it was for the state machine. Let me just check that. I'm going to take that offline and fix that. I think we've had a great discussion. We've seen a lot of the patterns in action. I'm kind of losing my voice to a certain extent from like just talking into this stream. It's been nearly 2 hours. Thank you very much to those who watched live. Thank you, Barcoded, for the discussion. Of course, this will be available on replay so people can watch later. And yeah, look out for Axminster. I'll do a notification on the Patreon when it's ready for test flight, and gather your information to get you onboarded if you want to beta test the app and give you feedback. Thanks very much, and we'll chat again soon.